New South Carolina poll shows Sanders closing the gap on Joe Biden, who's been counting on a win there for months.
We are back with Democratic strategist Michael Starr Hopkins and Director of Media at the Lincoln Network, Marshall Kosloff. All right, gentlemen, so big win for Bernie coming out of Nevada. I mean, we all expected he would win. I personally didn't expect it to be this big of a margin, so it was quite commanding.
Right.
He comes into South Carolina with a lot of momentum. New poll is out that shows him closing the gap with Joe Biden, but, and we should point out, it's a pretty big margin of error here, 5.5 percentage points, but still trailing Vice President Biden in South Carolina. What do you think, Michael? Is Joe able to hang on for a win here?
I mean, this has to be Joe Biden's last stand. I think he will hang on. I think the Clyburn endorsement will be helpful. This kind of reminds me back in 2008 when Barack Obama started to run away with the nomination, and then Hillary had that moment in the diner where she cried and came back and won, and there was a question about whether there was a reset. I think that's kind of where we are now because Sanders is starting to run away.
Reset, though? How could it be? Go ahead.
So this is the key thing. That New Hampshire 2008 story, that's not what's happening right here. Because what happened in New Hampshire was Hillary was overly stage managed before that. She wasn't running a good campaign. She wasn't sort of in her prime. What was so great about that moment where she cried was she sort of became herself again. That's what she said. She was aggressive. She put herself out there. Joe Biden's not going to be able to do that. Like, what's he going to? So
he's already
he ekes out a win in the state. He's going to give a fine speech, which everyone knows is going to sort of be the valedictory of his career. I think like that's what's actually going down here. Even if he wins, it's still his last stand.
Because here's the interesting thing. You mentioned the Clyburn endorsement. We're looking at the Nevada results. I don't know if you could throw that up, but he still only got 21% of the vote. And as Crystal pointed out earlier in the show, that was with the whole Democratic machine behind him, with Bernie getting almost 50% at 47. So,
and Nevada is a machine state.
And Nevada's a machine state, inherently more than South Carolina. So, Michael, I mean, you're going to go down to that state. You'll have our eyes on the ground for us. But tell us, like, is South Carolina fundamentally different? Because it seems to me it's probably just like every other state.
I think he has to win by a lot more than 5. I think at this point he's got to win by 8 to 10 points to be able to have that argument that he's, the comeback kid.
Right.
Which the irony in that is
how is that possible when Tom Steyer is number 3?
Tom Steyer ruined
20% of the
It'll be interesting to see. I actually think Tom Steyer will now underperform because I think Democrats are having this moment of panic where it's like, okay, if we don't do something, Sanders is really going to run away with this with Super Tuesday coming up. And I think people are kind of shifting because support among everything other than Sanders is so.
I think Steyer could underperform as well because I'll tell you, he blanketed the airwaves in Nevada. I mean, he spent a lot of money, more than Bernie Sanders spent in Nevada by several fold, and was on billboards. I mean, he was everywhere, and it basically amounted to nothing. So I do think he will underperform in South Carolina. The question is, to his supporters, then which candidate do they go to? Who has the momentum, right? And the debate tomorrow night will also be a significant factor.
And Steyer not making the debate stage, I think. Really.
No,
he finally made it. He did make it. He got a delegate.
I think Bernie's going to keep increasing his margins of victory here because there was this topic of electability for so long, and I think people thought electability, and a lot of people wagered their campaigns with this. Electability meant like I'm, very establishment, and I'm very straightforward. But what it actually meant was, can this person win elections? And Bernie is winning that electability count every single one of these races, right? And yes, there's the weird technicality of Mayor Pete, but he's still winning. He's winning the popular vote. So I think the Steyer support's going to fall away, and I don't think the Democrats in South Carolina are the ones who are freaking out about Bernie
about Sanders taking it away. I think that's the establishment thing. I mean, Michael, at this point, do you think Sanders is going to get the majority of the delegates?
Yeah, I think so. I think Super Tuesday is going to be a big day for him, and I think once he starts that big separation.
So you think he's going to go over 50 no broker convention? That's what I'm asking you.
Right now. Yeah. I think so, yeah.
So here's what he's going to do. What he's going to do is the second he wins Super Tuesday, which he will win it, he's going to pivot to the general election, and then it's going to be just like with Trump.
Already is.
He's going to. We just talked about this in the last panel. He's going to start talking about Trump, and then in all those sort of states, like the later states, those elections are not going to be about Mayor Pete versus him. They're going to be about we need to lead into the Democratic National Convention with a strong anti-Trump message.
Well, and I do think, to go back to Biden here for a minute, Super Tuesday comes mere days after South Carolina.
4 days.
So it's not like there's time to ramp up and raise lots of money and place new ads and get staff on the ground. I mean, that cake in a lot of ways is already baked, not to mention that a number of these states have been voting, including California, for quite some time now. So it seems to me like all of the rest of these candidates, the best they can possibly hope for at this point is to try to block Bernie from getting a majority of the delegates. I don't think anyone else is really even playing for first at this point.
No, which I think is kind of the problem because it's basically Sanders and everyone everyone else, and everyone else is splitting up the vote that would be the alternative to Sanders. If this was a two-person race, then I think we'd have a different conversation going.
Not
because
at this point, though.
Sanders and 5 other people, they're all cannibalizing that vote.
I think that was the case going in.
Yeah.
I think if you had just had Biden versus Bernie on the ballot from day one,
like
I think it's different. But that has shifted, and every win that he gets, to Marshall's point, changes those dynamics. So the last head-to-heads we saw, where it was like, how would Bernie do if it was just him versus Warren, just him versus Biden, et cetera? He won all of them. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, that window for consolidation has already closed.
Yeah, and
I think there's a little time left, but there's not much. If he wins a blowout fashion in South Carolina, and then you were to see Bloomberg do really well in Texas and California and some of those other states, you have Klobuchar win in Minnesota, then I think there's a conversation about how moving forward Sanders is able to meet that threshold. And if we don't meet that threshold, then that convention is just going to be.
So I would have agreed with you until I saw these Nevada results. Because, Marshall, what I saw there was he wins amongst moderates, he wins amongst cross age groups except over age 65, every ideological spectrum. That's when I was like, this is just like Trump. Basically, Trump was like, oh, he's the 20% candidate, the 30% candidate. Then he won 50% of the vote in Nevada because all the Republicans were like, okay, this is our guy. This is the guy who's going to beat Hillary Clinton. And even if they're not technically ideologically aligned, they go with the person they think is going to win.
And you actually just hit a nail on what the issue here is, which is that they were running, Trump was running against Hillary Clinton from the start. I think this would be different if there were no Republican incumbents. So let's say it's like 2024 with no Trump on the ballot. I think Democrats would be more open to splitting the ballot. They'd be more open to sort of a convention. But every single action, every single second that these candidates who are not winning these races stay in the race, they are literally making it easier for Trump to win an election. And everyone knows Trump wants nothing more than a brokered, terrible convention, which guess what he'll be able to say? He'll be able to say, once again, guys, the Democratic establishment is conspiring against Bernie. Like, that's all. Like, Trump is doing this.
Which is already saying it.
Which is already saying it.
Saying every day.
In this weird way,
he's just a
Trump
troll
and
in the background.
are aligned in terms of their theory of the cases here. So I don't know what people are thinking.
Well, they're both running anger-driven campaigns, a grievance policy.
I don't think that's really fair based on, whatever you think of the people online. I think if you listen to Bernie's rhetoric, it's, been very inclusive about getting people health care and turning the mic over to people who have gone bankrupt and are, facing eviction because they don't have health care. I do want to ask you, though, how do you think Bloomberg now plays on Super Tuesday? It obviously didn't go well for him in the first debate. He should have just stuck with the paid communications, I think we can all say. He's got a CNN town hall tonight. He's got the debate tomorrow.
He moved it to Wednesday.
Oh, they moved it to Wednesday?
Yeah, they moved it to Wednesday because he's taken the whole, last 4 days off doing preparation.
Interesting. Okay, good update.
Yeah.
But, we saw Steyer fall flat in Nevada despite lots of money being spent. Is that an indication that Bloomberg's support is relatively soft?
Yeah, I think his support, just like Joe Biden's support, it's all about who can beat Trump. And so people were supporting Bloomberg because they thought, given the money, given the resources, he would be the person who would be best suited to take on Trump. If he doesn't do well on Tuesday, and by doing well, he has to absolutely...
He's got to win a state, I think.
He has to, on the debate stage, knock someone out.
Yeah.
He has to really destroy someone, which I don't know if he's capable of doing.
He's going to come for Bernie.
Yeah, absolutely, he has to.
Yeah, but what does that look like? His net favorables, Marshall, dropped 20% after the last 20% in a single week.
30 points among moderates.
Yeah.
I think
30 points.
I think if we look at all the unsuccessful campaigns here, in terms of the ones that really had a shot, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, they all were narratives. They all were sort of, what they were running was the idea of this candidate. And the problem with sort of running as an idea is if you don't actually match that idea, if you're basically just a paper tiger, it's going to collapse instantly. I think that's why Bernie has been able to survive the heart attack, on 2 different levels, obviously. And that's why I think people, even like Mayor Pete's still doing well, because guess what? His whole thing is I'm like the young whippersnapper who says all the right things. He still does that consistently. And there's other people who can't do that. Klobuchar, actually, she's good at sort of being.
They're both authentic to their brands. Not saying I like the brand.
Yeah, but it's a brand.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see this week whether we see kind of the establishment Dems come off the bench and start endorsing candidates. We saw Clyburn do it, and Clyburn had said last weekend on Sharpton he wasn't going to come out and endorse anyone. Well, now he came out and endorsed Biden. We're going to see this.
I don't think he has officially done it yet, but
he's leaked to the press that it's going to happen. Yeah, and whether Harris endorses, whether Booker endorses, there's kind of this fear that if you endorse someone else, they lose, then you're on the bad side of the Sanders camp.
Right. Well, and I'll be interested to see if some of those more establishment figures decide it's time to jump on board the Bernie bandwagon. Some of them will certainly do that. We talked earlier about how Ted Lieu came out with a very positive statement about Bernie Sanders, so it'll be interesting to see if more of that follows as well.
Certainly. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Tomorrow on Rising, friend of the show Michael Brooks shares predictions ahead of tomorrow's South Carolina debate.
And the chairman of the South Carolina Democratic Party is going to answer all of our questions about the Palmetto State primary. That'll be a good one. Everybody have a great day. We will see you back here tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.